I am obsessed with friendship. To me, the kinship that can be experienced between friends is one of the most beautiful things in the world, one of God's most precious inventions. And it's even more valuable because it rarely comes easy. In today's episode of the David and Jonathan Bible study on friendship and calling, my brother the king, we're going to look at the implications of 4 little verses where Jonathan leaves his royal court behind, strikes out into the wilderness to look for his exiled friend, and strengthens him in the Lord. This is in 1 Samuel 23. Now, what was he actually doing? How is it possible, and how can we do likewise? We've already seen that Jonathan is a friend who not only talked a big game, but lived out his intentions with sincerity and faithfulness. He supported David even when it was unpopular and risky. He had the heart to recognize and meet a need before it was expressed, and the prophetic vision to speak God's words into situations that required more than a natural answer. And we've already established that his steadfast integrity in all of this stemmed from his pursuit of the Lord. But how do we know that he was pursuing the Lord? Well, from what he was able to do in the midst of what was going on. Let's quickly recap that. In 1 Samuel 21 through 24, David is running for his life while King Saul is trying to kill him. God rescued David from Saul, from the Philistines, and he surrounded him with a disgruntled band of brothers who would eventually become his famous mighty men. But in the meantime, David's heart was being torn apart by the rigors of exile, and he was learning the slow and painful lesson of relying on the one who anointed him with no idea of when he would become king or what would happen to Saul. Meanwhile, Jonathan was back in the palace being accused of treason and watching his father murder anyone else who he blamed for supporting David. In the midst of all this, Jonathan is still able to discern that David needs encouragement and go and offer it quickly and quietly without announcement or reward. What he said to David shows us that his priorities were still as focused and true as his archer's aim in battle. He reminded David of the promises of God and once again established future stock in them. Rather than freaking out over what they didn't know or what was currently happening and trying to find a solution, Jonathan reminded David that they could be as faithful as they knew how with the promises God had already spoken, that the current circumstances didn't negate those promises, even though they couldn't see them right now. And in doing this, Jonathan demonstrated great courage, selfless kindness, God-sized vision, patient endurance rooted in trust, and a sense of fullness. He was so full of the Lord that he could give hope away to David, as opposed to Saul, who was full of jealousy and breathing out rage. The biblical word for how Jonathan strengthened David here refers to a cementing of belief, a stirring of fervor, a resolution of purpose. It wasn't just his own wishful thinking he was imparting to David, but a reminder of the promises of God. When your vision is fixed on God, you're able to step right into the storms of life and give your brother or sister a hand up because the word of God leaves you unshaken. How do you know the word of the Lord for your loved ones? You stay connected to the vine. When your life is a tree planted by the streams of water, and when it's God's hand that has bound your heart to others, you'll remain constantly refreshed, even in tough times, because his spirit will always remind you of your connection to his bigger plans. When God is your mainstay, you will always have sustenance and purpose. Now, what Jonathan did showed a lot of faith. I mean, do we really trust God when the future is a blank canvas and we don't hold the pen? It all goes back to our understanding of his worthiness and our hold on his promises. And fortunately, even when it feels like our grip is weakening, his steadfast love will never let us go. Remember that the next time you feel discouraged because you want to be a good friend to others, but you desperately need a Jonathan yourself. You have one in Jesus, and clinging to his word will always keep you on the joyful path of life, a path that leads right through the storms to a safe haven of reward. Be encouraged, and I'll see you next time.